History caught on film. It had never been done before. No communist bloc country had ever dared challenge the military might of the Soviet Union. But on October 23rd, 1956, that all changes. On that day, the dream of revolution becomes a reality in the streets of Budapest, Hungary. For 2 brief weeks, the people of Hungary rise up in armed revolt against Soviet oppression. Protests had begun the previous year. The Soviet Union had replaced Hungary's moderate Prime Minister Emre Nagy with a communist hardliner in an effort to tighten its grip on the country. On October 23rd, chafing under the new restrictions, thousands of university students and workers take to the streets, calling for democratic reforms. That day, 35-year-old cameraman József Mikó is returning from working on a film when he encounters a group marching from the university.
I worked for a while for the newsreel, like every other cameraman had to. So I always carried a handheld camera, an Oriflex with me. We passed the technical university, and the student came out just when we passed by. And I pulled out the Oriflex and I started shooting.
One of the first images József Mikó captures is that of Ferenc Zena, a 20-year-old ironworker marching at the head of the group, his welding goggles still on his head.
It was like a small stream started out from the university, and as we were going to the square, it was like getting bigger and bigger. It was a fantastic feeling. The people changed. You know, we were reborn at that moment, that we felt our strength and our desire, and it was just a fantasy. It was so wonderful.
In a show of support, people began throwing red, white, and green ribbons, the colors of the Hungarian national flag, out of their windows to those marching below.
People was coming out of work, and they get out of the streetcar. I mean, 1 million people went to the street in a matter of hours. And we never thinking of what would be the consequences. We know what we want. That was burning in our mind, and you could see in our eyes.
During the march, Mikó's camera catches a dramatic moment as daring demonstrators use pocket knives to cut the Communist Party emblem out of the Hungarian flag.
That cutout flag with the hole in the middle became the symbol of the revolution.
The police make no attempt to stop the marchers. Some even join the demonstration.
You see the police here? The police joined them and even lead them.
It was spontaneous. No general of any rank could have ever organized it. It was a spontaneous. Everybody was fitting in.
As news spreads, more and more people join the march. By the time it reaches Ben Plaza, a popular gathering spot, thousands of Hungarians stream into the square.
You can see in the film, I climbed up the building and I took the plaza and the street, the lead to the plaza. As far as you can see, was people everywhere. It was amazing.
Heady with freedom, a group of demonstrators attacks a statue of former Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin.
Stalin was a symbol of oppression, the police state, the deportations, the hangings, all the misery that the Soviet system brings.
Meanwhile, another group of demonstrators heads for the government-run radio station to broadcast their call for freedom.
And then we went to the radio, and we stopped at the street in a small square, And we hear gunfire, and that's when the secret police was shooting the demonstrators. And I knew then that this is serious. There is no return.
They start shooting, and they shot, I think, 3 students. And that's when they get some weapons, the students get some weapons, and that's when the revolution really became a revolution.
Mikó keeps on filming as freedom fighters battle the Hungarian secret police. By 11 p.m., the protesters win control of the radio station. The next morning, Soviet tanks stationed outside Budapest rumble into the city. They are greeted with sniper fire and Molotov cocktails.
For the Molotov cocktail, it was very effective against the tanks. They were rubberized, and that's what burned from the Molotov cocktails. So we always try to hit the side of the tank when the wheels are. Sometimes I put down the camera and I throw a few Molotov cocktail when it was hot, the situation.
For the next 4 days, the fighting spreads. Mikó shoots thousands of feet of 35mm film as the people rise up across the city.
I want to see the West, to see what's happening in Hungary. That's all the only thing interested, to get out as fast as possible so they're able to see maybe they can help us out somehow.
Ferenc Senna, like thousands of other Hungarians, has taken up arms against the communist regime.
Everybody was participating, children, women, middle-aged people, the whole population. When we arrived with a truckload of ammunition and guns, people just reach out their arms, you know, give me, give me. That's how we distributed ammunition. Somebody had more than he needed, and then we just reloaded.
Within 48 hours, the freedom fighters capture the ultimate prize, Communist Party headquarters, the stronghold of the secret police.
These Hungarian tanks, they shooting the headquarters. They were sent to relieve the fighting over there on the behalf of the communists, but they didn't do that. They sided with the freedom fighters. I took part of this action here.
The revolutionaries sack the secret police headquarters and wreak revenge on their oppressors.
This is the building, the secret police building, and the secret police are inside, and they go in and drag them out, a lot of them, and kill them on the plaza.
Mikó films a party official who is killed and then hanged by the crowd. There are other even more gruesome things happening, but he cannot bear to show the world.
And this time was some really savage act, but I burned the film. I didn't want anybody to see the film.
Feeling the pressure, communist leaders allow Emre Nagy to return to power. Almost immediately, he asks the Soviets to leave, and on October 29th, just 6 days after the revolution began, the Red Army begins to withdraw from Budapest. For the first time in history, a Soviet satellite succeeds in open armed revolt.
It was an unbelievable feeling to be free again and get rid of the communism.
Mikó documents the celebration of their newfound freedom as Hungarians set fire to communist propaganda and begin removing all signs of Soviet oppression.
Now this is after the Russian left, they tearing down all the emblems from the buildings, the Russian emblems. This one, I think they couldn't tear it down, take it down, so they covered it with the Hungarian flag.
Mikó is with some revolutionaries when they discover a secret jail at the home of a Communist Party leader.
From the garage, they had a stair. Here is the garage, and here is, you see the stairs. A small jail was there, and we find a guy was still there who was afraid to leave. He was so scared, he didn't leave. We told him he can leave and he's free.
But their freedom would prove to be short-lived. After a dozen days of independence, the Hungarian Revolution would be over. Coming up, Russian tanks crushed the rebellion.
They shoot everything that moved. They come with such a brutal force that the freedom fighters had no chance.
Caught on Film will return here on the History Channel. We now return to Caught on Film. On November 4th, 1956, Russian tanks roll back into Budapest. József Mikó is there as well, recording the end of the short-lived Hungarian Revolution.
The very first thing they did when they come back, surrendered the parliament building, because that was the center of the government.
This is the second part of the Russian invasion. They come with 6,000 tanks and air force and with a mighty force.
The Hungarians bravely fight on, but they are simply no match for Soviet military might.
They shoot everything that moved. They come with such a brutal force that the freedom fighters had no chance after November 4.
I took pictures of the damage because that's what I want to show to the West, and they see what kind of damage they're doing to the country and to Budapest. And so we get some help. But as you know, the help never came.
In just 2 days, Hungary's bid for freedom is crushed. More than 2,500 Hungarians are killed during the revolt and brutal crackdown.
So I lost one close friend. He was crossing the street and ended up over 70 bullets in his body. We don't know from who, presumably secret police or the Russian army.
It's so many young people died.
Hundreds of thousands of Hungarians flee, seeking refuge in the West. Many, including Ferenc Zena, cross into Austria before the border is closed by the Russians.
All of a sudden, I was crawling out of my country on mud and dirt, and with what I had on, lost hope and everything, you know. The mood of the people was devastating. I mean, can you imagine that from a 10 million country, in a matter of 2 weeks, over 200,000 people left? It was a very devastating mood.
József Mikó smuggles the footage he has shot to the American embassy. He hides copies of the original film in his locker at work. Several days later, he learns he is wanted by the authorities.
One day, I went to the studio, and friends waited outside the corner, and they told me, don't come in because they're waiting for you. The Russians were there and was waiting for me. They told me, don't go home because they know your address.
Mikó and his family leave Hungary that night, hiding in the postal car of a train bound for Austria. Later, his footage is finally broadcast in the West. Soon, Mikó learns from friends in Hungary that the Soviets have found and confiscated the footage in his locker to be used for their own purposes.
After I was in Vienna, and I called back, and they told me they're using my footage to identify people. I feel real bad about this because I never thought about that. Lots of people went into jail because of my footage. So I think in a way I did a lot of damage. But you never know. I never thought about when I was shooting this, it's going to happen this way.
It takes another 35 years, but in 1991, Soviet tanks finally roll out of Budapest. Hungarians take to the street in celebration, joining millions of other people from former Warsaw Pact nations that have been freed from the communist bloc. Many believe that the fall of communism really began during those October days in 1956.
I very firmly believe that the collapse of the Soviet Empire was started in the street of Budapest, because the communist system was never the same again. I always believed that we will win. I was not sure that I would leave it to see it, but I was blessed that I can see my country free again. The Hungarian Revolution proved, in my opinion, that if you believe in something, you really can do something about it.
Following the liberation of Hungary, József Mikó donated the film he had shot during the revolution to the Hungarian Film Institute. That film is now archived in the Hungarian Film Museum as the Mikó Collection and is considered to be a national treasure. Today, József Mikó's rarely seen footage lasts as one of the only records of Hungary's courageous fight for freedom.
You know, I didn't realize really the importance of the film until the Hungarian Film Institute got a hold of it, and I saw how important for them this footage. I never thought this film one day will be so important for the history.